you to our first physical book launch ever since the COVID pandemic. We are here today to celebrate the launch of the autobiography of an unlikely police chief, Sri B. Alvora, IPS retired. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce the master of ceremonies of this event. He is a senior media professional of Kashmir origin with a wide experience in print media, TV, radio, media education, and corporate communications. As a journalist, his main subject of specialization is Tibet, China, India. He has the distinction of being the only Indian journalist in the past 50 years who could visit Tibet without the Chinese government's patronization or control. Currently, he is the chairman, Center for Himalayan Asia Studies and Engagement, New Delhi. He is also a renowned photographer. He has been invited across the globe for his photo exhibitions and photo-based talk shows on Tibet and Tibetan Buddhist culture. He has over a dozen books to his credit. He received the K.K. Birla Foundation Fellowship for Journalist for his work on Tibet. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Vijay Kranti.
Namaskar and good evening. Sometimes it's a bit difficult to be praised and prove that you are really the same person or you are really worth that description. Thank you very much for being so kind, Jiza. Today, as you know, we are here for a very special reason and for a very special person. For me personally, he is very special for the reason that I had the privilege of growing up with him in a small refugee colony as his junior. We grew up together in Bharatnagar, which is, if we look at Parliament building, by air, the distance is less than 10 kilometers. And he is one of those very special residents of Bharatnagar who has grown up from son of Bharatnagar to the son of Bharat. And although he is a very famous police officer, a very famous writer, but for the people of Bharatnagar, he is someone to look towards in every situation. For younger people, he has been a kind of role model. So he is telling me that I should not praise him much. As my, yeah. So today, we will have the privilege of having with us some very renowned persons, learned people, to join us in this show. We have Padma Vibhushan Shri N.N. Vohraji. May I request Vohraji to please come to the stage. It's a privilege, sir, being with you. Yes, sir. First you. We are going to have Mr. Prakash Singh, Padma Shri Prakash Singh ji also, but for some reason he will join us a little later. So, oh. Sir, you are here. So it's nice that Padma Shri Prakash Singh ji is here. Please. He's come. I thought he has come. Okay. No, somebody indicated that he is here. Right. So we have a very prominent personality, Mr. Praveen Swami. I request you, sir, please join us. Then Mr. Siddharth Luthra. Sir, please be with us. Thanks for being here. So now I'll request the doula of the day, Mr. B. Alvora. Please join us. And now The Sutradhar of this day is Mr. KPR Nair. The man who is behind this book, the publisher of this book, of Konark Publications. Before we start the proceeding, I would love to give a short introduction to our panelists. I will be repeating a few things because all of them are already known to you, but still, as a formality, we must do it. We have Padma Vibhushan Alvora ji with us, who is one of the most outstanding administrators of India. He is from IAS 1959 cadre of belonging to Punjab. He has been Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister of India. He has been Home Secretary of India, Defense Secretary, Defense Production Secretary. And he has held many other positions in Punjab, including the Home Secretary during most difficult days of Punjab. He has been Governor of J&K. And one very interesting thing is the place we are sitting here, the India International Center. He has been the president for quite a long time. We welcome Mr. Shri Prakash Singh ji here. Prakash Singh ji, welcome, sir. So, Shri Padma Shri Prakash Singh ji has just joined us. We all are familiar with him when we watch him on TV and various other platforms. He is yet another distinguished IPS officer of 1959 batch and also a batchmate of Mr. N.N. Vohra. He served as DGP UP, Assam, and of BSF, and he is now, this BSF is now being headed by an equally distinguished officer, Mr. Pankaj Singh. So he is well known for his crusade for police reforms, because that is a field where he excels. And many of us know him for his historic public interest litigation, which resulted into 7 directives of Supreme Court, and that made a big change in the history. He is a very popular writer and a panelist. We see him very regularly on TV channels. We are privileged to have a very famous name of Indian journalism, Mr. Praveen Swami. He is currently working as the National Security Editor of The Print, and he was National Editor of Strategic and International Affairs at Indian Express. He was Resident Editor of the Delhi edition of The Hindu. He was Diplomatic Editor of the Daily Telegraph in London. And BBC described him as one of India's foremost commentators on Islamic terrorism. It's a subject which is drawing everybody's attention. So that makes him a more important person. He has written many books. One of his books, India, Pakistan and the Secret Jihad, the cover war in J&K from 1947 to 2002. It is a milestone for those people who want to understand Islamic terrorism, who want to understand the Islamic terrorism's link with the Jammu Kashmir situation. He is also author of The Kargil War, and he has won many awards. Indian Express, Ramnath Goenka Print Journalism, which is we consider as a journalist, I can say, which is the Nobel Prize of India for journalists. And then he was also winner of the Prem Bhatia Award for political journalism and Sanskriti Samman for the year 1999. Praveen Swamiji, welcome. We have Mr. Siddharth Luthra, who is a very prominent practitioner of law. He is famous for fighting and winning many prominent cases. And he's one of those lawyers who protected not only ordinary people, but he protected the judges also, who were personally facing legal troubles. So he has been the Additional Solicitor General of India at the Supreme Court, Currently, he is member of National Legal Service Authority and also the Delhi State Legal Service Authority. He is a resource person at the Delhi Judicial Academy and also the Vice President of the Indian Criminal Justice Society. He has been conferred the Doctor of Laws honoris causa by the MIT University of Noida. And there is a long list of his articles and books on law, which I'm sure we are all familiar with. So it's great to have a very celebrated legal authority in a policeman's function. So now may I request Manika Agrawal, who is daughter of Mrs. and Mr. Vora, to please present a bouquet to Shri N.N. Vora ji. Manika Agrawal. So now I will invite Mr. Ayan Kapoor, who is the grandson of Mrs. Vora and Mr. Vora, to present a bouquet to Shri Prakash Singh ji. He is a student of 12th in Sri Ram School, Gurgaon, and he is son of Sonia and Rajneesh Kapoor ji. Thank you, Ayan. So now I will invite Adit Agarwal, who is the grandson of Mrs. Vora and Mr. Vora. This is an opportunity for the children to gauge the height of their parents, grandparents, because at home you see them, in my case, if I can quote, अपनी दादी से डांट खाते हुए, नानी से डांट खाते हुए देखते हैं. But when you see them in such a gathering, it's a great. So Adit is a student of 12th in Modern School, Barakamba Road, and he is son of Manika and Anuj Agrawal ji. And now it is Avi Agrawal. Come, Avi. He is also grandson of Mrs. and Mr. Vora, and he will present bouquet to Shri Siddharth Luthra ji. He is a student of 10th standard in Modern School, Barakamba, and he is son of Manika and Anuj ji. So this part over. Now it's time to give a very short introduction to the author, Mr. B. L. Vora. As I said, he comes from a with a very interesting background. As a son of a refugee family, who he himself and his family moved from after the partition from the part which is now known as Pakistan, and later on, in due course, his family was offered a house in Bharatnagar, and that house was 1.5 room house. I have very vivid memories of that house. I grew up there, and so, in short, people like me have seen the growth of Mr. Vora from a very ordinary boy of a very ordinary family with a very humble status, growing into one of the best positions, taking over that any young man or young woman of India would ever think for himself or herself. And he has been, in his career, he has served in Delhi, Manipur, Tripura, Punjab, Jammu Kashmir, and also almost all central armed police forces like BSF, CRPF, CISF, and also civil defense. So that has given him a very wide experience of how the policing in India is done and how its contact with the rest of society and how police is a link between the society and the government. So he has spearheaded for what he is known is counterinsurgency operations in Tripura. And he was Home Secretary of Manipur. And he is also known for jail reforms because of his very special experience in Manipur. And he has won many awards. The President's Police Medal for Distinguished Service. He is winner of Guru Samman by the Vice President of India and many other honors. So he is today a great coach for younger generation who are aspiring for going to IAS, IPS. And he is a very successful coach, teacher. He is involved in a very interesting social service organization. It's called Vastradan, because in our families, every family has at any given time almost 100 pieces of clothes which are in very good shape but which are not in use. He has been able to reach out to people and convince them that let us to gather these things and let these things reach to those families, those children, those people who need them. That's a very remarkable work, Voraji, you have done, and we admire you for that. Voraji is author of 13 books, and this is the latest book. Many people like me, I am a journalist, so many times I have been asked by people, तुसी कर दे की हो? I tell them I write. अच्छा क्या लिखते हो? बताते हैं न्यूज़पेपर में लिखते हैं. अच्छा वो अखबार में तो लिखते हो, और क्या करते हो? उनका रिपोर्टिंग करते हैं. अच्छा देख के वो लोगों की बात लिखते हो. हाँ, कर दे की हो? I could never answer this question because it's a very difficult question. करते क्या हो? तो कई बार मुझे मन में आता है कि मैं वोरा जी से पूछूं कि सर आप पुलिस में रहे हो और 13 किताबें आपने लिखी, आप अपना काम कब करते थे? Anyhow, that is not the question I should have asked. His senior must have asked him. But seeing the popularity of his books and the subjects, I am sure he was always admired for that work. So now I will request Mr. Nair to please present a bouquet to his author, Mr. B. Alvora. So going forward, this is time for a welcome address. I will request Shreya Mehra, please come. Shreya Mehra is the daughter of Archana ji and Rashi Mehra ji, and she is the alumni of DPS RK Puram. She worked with Walmart and after graduation, and she is now going to London School of Economics for a post-graduation course. So welcome, Shreya. Please, stage is yours.
Thank you so much. So, good evening, everyone. I am pleased to welcome all of you today in this function to release the autobiography of my grandfather, B. Alvora. And thank you so much for coming over for this lovely evening. His life itself has been a motivating story, and I have been lucky to listen, witness, and be a part of some of the great stories in his life. He is a legend and has overcome many hardships to reach where he is today. He was reluctant to write his story, though we kept on persisting, and finally he gave in. He has always quoted to me that those who dream the most do the most. So dream big, work hard, and be kind. For me, the one thing that is very special to me about my Nanu, my grandfather, is that he has the kindest heart. He has always taught us, the grandchildren, the importance of building relationships in life and being a helping hand to those who can benefit a lot from a little bit of our help. So his is a motivating book, and it's definitely worth a read. I am sure that there is some takeaway and learning for all of us present here. So congratulations, Nanu. Thank you.
Thank you, Shreya, for introducing your grandfather and welcoming the guests here. So now I will invite Mr. B. Alvora to introduce his book and the motivation he had behind writing this book. Mr. B. Alvora, please.
Respected Shri Anand Vora, thank you, sir, for coming here today. You have always been very kind. Thank you, Mr. Prakash Singh, sir, for coming again. In fact, really beholden, sir, because you agreed to come at a very short notice because Mr. Nikhil Kumar had some commitment way back home and Mr. Prakash Singh had some family commitment also, but well, for me, he decided to come. Thank you, sir, so much. Mr. Praveen Swami, well-known international security expert, thank you. Siddharth Luthra, thank you for coming. Mr. Nair, the publisher, thank you very much. Mr. Nair is busy talking, he doesn't listen to thank yous. And thank you, Vijay, he's also not listening, doesn't matter. And thank you, my seniors who are here. Mr. R.K. Khandelwal is here. Thank you, sir. I'm so grateful and honored you came. Mr. Karthikeyan is here. And my elder brother, V.P. Kapoor. He was my inspiration to join the IPS. We are from the same colony. He is my elder, he is my neighbor, sir, also. And first time, in fact, I went to Jhansi to attend his wedding. His younger brother was a dear friend, and we were, of course, neighbors also. And there I saw his status, perks, orderlies, bungalows, jeeps and all. I was very impressed. I said, God knows what this kind of job he has got. And till then I had not known anything about the civil services examination at all. But the first seed was sown then. But then he was very brilliant in studies, unlike me. And so I gave away. I gave up. I said, no point. Why talk of joining this? But anyway, that persisted, and later on, so much has been talked, you can see in the book also. And later at one particular job, there was a woman, an officer of the Indian Audit and Account Service, Mrs. I. Indra. I wonder whether any one of you has heard. I was in a particular office working, and I resigned. Rash young people, that is what they do. Because I wasn't given leave to attend the wedding of a friend. And I resigned, and my mother blasted me. She said, go back, otherwise I'll tell your father. And my father was very generous in using his stick. Those were the days when the stick was used very often, not these days at all. And then she said, go back, get your resignation back. I was really worried, but next day, she was the bigger boss. She called me, tore up my resignation, gave me leave, and she asked me, why don't you try for civil services? Well, I don't know why she said that, but anyway, it was there. And then many people helped along. So I have come, all the long story to cut it short. I'm so grateful to all of you. And one thing I want to say here, that in this country, I think this India, the inclusive country, democratic country, everybody has a chance. I think we're very lucky. You don't really necessarily need money or resources to really come up. Many of us are here, and mine is not a unique story. There are millions of such stories. People have come up, and I think we must be, at least I am very grateful to my motherland. And I think it's a message to everyone else also, all the youth. You don't have to worry. This country is a land of opportunities. The only thing you need is a bit of effort, and of course, a lot of good luck. Thank you so much, everyone. It's a big blessing you all came. Thank
you. Thank you, Mr. Vora, for this very crisp and wonderful introduction. Now is the time when is the moment for us, all of us, to see the book launched. So may I request our respected panelists to please launch this book. Shri Vora ji, please, Mr. Anand Vora, please let us launch the book. I will request now, as I said, the Sutradhar of today's event and the book, Mr. KPR Nair, the publisher of Konark Publications, to. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Vijay, for all your nice words. We need these words very badly at this moment. Good evening, everyone. Respected Sri N.N. Moharji, Sri Prakash Singh Ji, Sri Siddharth Luthra Sahab, Sri Praveen Swami, Sri B. Alvora, our author, and Sri Vijay Kranji, today's moderator. I am very happy that I have another distinguished author sitting here, Dr. Narendra Jadhav, former Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha. I think he just retired for something else a few days back. Then a relative and a great friend of mine, Vice Admiral Ashok Kumarji, former Vice Chief of Navy, Indian Navy, presently Chief Maritime Advisor, Government of India. He is not going to leave Delhi. I think he wants to still serve the country for another 4 or 5 years. Good luck to both of them, and they are here with their wives. Thank you so much. It is with immense pleasure that I stand here today at the launch function of an unlikely police chief. It is Sri B. Alvora's 4th book that Konark is publishing. His earlier works published by us include Don't Laugh, We Are Police in 1995, Humor in Khaki in 2006, and 3 Tripura Brave Hearts in 2011. This book, being his memoir, is really special to us, as we have seen the years of hard work that he has put into this, and we know how close this book has been to him. It is indeed an honor to publish the work of an officer who has contributed immensely to our country through his sincerity and dedication. My relationship with Sri Vora Sahab started in the year 1992, if my memory goes well, when I happened to call on him at his CGO complex office. He did not have any airs of being a senior police officer, though his cabin was quite big. He came across to me as a great human being. Despite his busy schedule, he did not allow me to leave his office without having lunch with him. I think this must be the first or last lunch as a publisher I got from an author in the first meeting, because the author always assesses whether this man can deliver or not, number one. Number two, whether he has enough money to pay me, because after he will publish the book, he will make a lot of money, and then whether he'll pay me my royalty or not, because we have very bad reputation as a publisher in India. That day opened the doors of long years of association that are filled with affection and respect for each other. I used to trouble him every now and then. I don't know how and why. One night at 1:30, 2 o'clock, I get a call from a lady called Lakshmi Bhatia. She is not here. She later joined, she was my anchor for many books releases, and she later joined Gap, the American company, and she was going for an interview into Singapore. Somehow her passport those days had some issue with some ECR, I think immigration clearance required or something. So she was stopped by the immigration at the airport, and her interview was due in Singapore, and she was sure she will get the job, and she was refused. She explained in about half an hour time to all those officers and others there, please allow me to go. I'm a postgraduate from Delhi School of Economics, and that permits me to leave the country and come back. They said, no, nothing doing. Your ECR is not cleared, so better not to go. You go home. So he thought of me, she says. She rang me up 2 o'clock night. She said, what do I do, Mr. Nair? Only I thought of you. I said, where is your father? You should have rang him up. He was with the UGC and all that. But he said, no, he won't help me. Only you can help me. So that motivated me. So I thought of now, whom I catch up? Now, this is the 2 o'clock time. So I asked my wife. She said, sleep. Forget about it. She said, don't trouble other people. You already got a call and you are now in a fix. Then somehow, I always get a kind of a feeling at those times in my life, thought of Vora Sahab. And I knew if he picks up the call, he will do something. So I said, let me try. I just made one call at 2 o'clock, 2:15 I think. And he did not pick up. Naturally, I did not expect him to pick up also. Then I sent a message saying this is something. I know you must be sleeping, but anyway. But he immediately rang me up. He asked some details. Where is she? I said, she is waiting at the immigration. He said, don't ask her to go away, be there. And in 5 minutes, she was cleared. Thank you, Vora Sahab. I still remember that. And she made to the interview. She got the job in Gap. And she worked for 13 or 14 years with Gap. Now she's doing a lot of social work. One of the finest another human being I met in my life. So another interesting incident also I must talk to about Vora Sahab here. It was during my daughter's marriage in Delhi. Like him, I got 3 daughters, very difficult girls. They are all Delhi born, so no kind of discipline will work on them with all my efforts. And my then future son-in-law, Jonathan, an American, insisted that he would come only on an elephant to marry my daughter. Because the eldest daughter was married and he heard that he came on a horse and he was Punjabi. So that is okay. But then he thought if he could come Punjabi, why can't I should come on an elephant? So he had 42 people from America with him saying that my father-in-law agreed. No dowry he is going to give. But he agreed to arrange an elephant and I can come on an elephant. And all these 40 people, Americans, they are very intelligent people. They thought the best way to see an Indian elephant is in Delhi. So they trooped down. So they were here. So that gave I got sleepless nights. So I asked my wife, what do I do? From where elephant? I used to see elephant actually across Yamuna when I used to come across the bridge from Shadra. So they used to take bath and all. So when I said yes, I thought of those elephants, but they are not available for marriages and all. So then I thought of again Vora Sahab. I said, who else? So I thought of him and then I said, best thing is talk to Vora Sahab. She said, do it. Good luck. So I spoke to Vora Sahab. He said, what's your problem? Like any police person. But I know that is positive question, not negative. I said, this is a problem. I am now in soup. This man is here. He is asking, my elephant has come or not. And they were housed in Gurgaon in three or four houses. 42 Americans, And he told everybody that elephant is coming. So he said, no problem. My son-in-law also came on an elephant. I said, what? Yes. So he said, I will arrange, don't worry. So he gave me a number in Khan Market. He said, elephant is there. So I went to Khan Market to see an elephant. I said, all the places, Khan Market, how can you have an elephant there? So I went to Archie's bookshop and they arranged an elephant. Very, very beautiful elephant. And she was available there immediately. And I rang up Vora Sahab and I said, this majestic looking elephant has been arranged. Thank you so much. So the happy faces of the groom and his nephews and nieces, they all got over the elephant, about 6 of them. That was another story I will tell you later. So nephews and nieces were all captured on video and are treasured for posterity. This elephant journey remains one of the most memorable moments of my life, and it would not have been possible without Vora Sahab's managerial and helpful nature. There are many more such interesting incidents which I need to thank him for. He is a karma yogi and I am blessed that I am in constant touch with him. Today, more than anything, I would like to thank him for trusting Konark with the most important work of his life, his memoir. We have done around 2,000 books so far. We started the company in 1987 and this is one of the finest books we have done. And I am very happy about it, so has my team. I hope we have been able to meet all your expectations for us. I thank each and every one of you on the dais as well as those who came to take part in today's event. I would like to end by once again thanking Vora Sahab for sharing his best work with us, so that with us that is so honestly and lucidly written. Thank you, Vora Sahab. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nair, for opening a door which I had closed on myself very strongly. First time when Voraji asked me, Vijay, are you available for this being master of ceremony? I could never say no. I said, yes, I am. तुम करना. मैंने कहा ठीक है. And the first thing I thought I will share with you was a story which, later on I decided I should not. But Mr. Nair has opened the door. I'll tell you a very long story in very short. What happened, being friend of Mr. Bora, what it means. I have grown up through the socialist swarg. समाजवादी स्वर्ग में पैदा हुआ आदमी हूँ मैं. When we lived in a country which was socialist heaven. और ये स्वर्गवासी आपको कहानी सुना रहा है कि जिन दिनों में डालडा खरीदने के लिए एमपी का लेटर चाहिए होता था, टेलीफोन लेने के लिए राष्ट्रपति का भी शायद हो सकता नहीं काम करे. माई सिस्टर वॉज गेटिंग मैरिड एंड दोज डेज इट वॉज समर और बर्फ़ नहीं मिल रही थी बाज़ार में. इमेजिन करिए कि बेटी की शादी है, घर में शादी हो रही है, बारात आने वाली है और आपके पास बर्फ़ नहीं है, सोडे की वो जो कोका कोला वगैरह की बोतलें रखी हैं. एंड सबको बुरा हाल हो रहा. मेरे पिताजी परेशान थे, यार कैसे होगा कैसे होगा. वी ट्राइड एवरी सोर्स एंड दोज डेज बर्फ was at a premium. You could not get whatever you could do. And we needed 1 silli of baraf. So finally my father said, oh yaar Pushan nu puch. Oh apna Pushan hai na. Apna Pushan, he has been an asset all his life for every Bharat Nagar wala. Kapoor Saab and Verma ji and everybody, my friends who are there from there will agree with me. And my father said, Pushan nu kya yaar ho jayega. Because he had faith in him. Now my problem was reaching him. We luckily had his phone and he was available on phone. So I told him, Bhushan Veer ji, we are in trouble. अच्छा अच्छा रुक जा, किथे हो, कहाँ हो. मैंने कहा घर पर हैं. अच्छा, ओ मॉरिस नगर पुलिस स्टेशन. ही कॉल्ड द थानेदार मॉरिस नगर ने पुल बंगश के पास जो आइस फैक्ट्री है उसके जनरल मैनेजर को फ़ोन किया और लोकल थानेदार को फ़ोन कर दिया. हम लोगों की जान निकल रही थी कि बारात अभी आ जाएगी और हमारी बोतलें गर्म हैं. भाई साहब 2 सिल्ली बारात के आने से 2 घंटा पहले पहुंच गई. It was a huge relief. Sir, I know we are in time. I am seeing, yes. I took this privilege, liberty of, because Mr. Nair started it and why I could, be left behind. Now, but Mr. Vora has been an asset. He was stopped many times on the road. और पूछन रुकी जरा, lady sitting on मंजी चारपाई, जरा बैठ जा. He is in police officer. He is a police officer in uniform. तू बैठ जा. मेरा ना दामाद बड़ा तंग करता है मेरी वो लड़की को, जरा इन्हू सीधा कर दे. Those were the expectations. Nation had other expectations and people had others. But he met both of them. Thank you, Voraji, for that. And sorry for taking this liberty. Now I will request, this is time for our panelists to enlighten us. I will request Prakash Singh ji to kindly come and enlighten us. Prakash Singh ji. Thank you.
Mr. Vora, distinguished persons on the dais, and no less distinguished ladies and gentlemen among the audience. First of all, I would like to compliment Vora for having written this wonderful book. I say it wonderful because initially, frankly speaking, I don't like reading autobiographies. Biographies, yes. Autobiographies, I generally don't read. So a few days back when he rang me up and he said, you have to come, I said, yes, I'm definitely coming. But when he said, no, you have to be on the dais, I said, no, dais वैसे नहीं, मैं नीचे बैठूंगा और वहीं अच्छा से सुनूंगा. But he had a problem and I had to come to his rescue, and so I had to agree to speak. And when I have to speak, then I had to read the book also. as I said, I don't normally read autobiographies, but as I started turning over the pages, I started with some disinterest. But as I started turning over the pages, I said, no, here is something interesting. It's a real life story of a man, I mean, you can say probably from rags to riches. I mean, here is a man who starts as an LDC. He comes as a refugee, as nobody. They take shelter in Delhi, and then he starts his career as an LDC, goes to becomes an UDC in due course, and then an assistant in the railways. And after that, he takes a shot at the IPS and qualifies in that. I thought it was a tremendous journey. I had known B. Alvora earlier, but I had not known his journey in life, and that is what aroused my interest in the story, that here is a man who can start from the scratch and go right up to the top. I mean, he served in different organizations also, Delhi Police, Border Security Force, CRPF, SSB, CISF, and finally retiring as Director General. And what I found interesting, that here is a man who starts from Jaisalmer House and concludes his career also there. I mean, I think destiny was playing its part and shaping him along a particular course, that you have to move along this course, which is what he did. As I started reading the book, as I said, what I liked about the book was its simplicity. See, normally, as I said, why I don't read and like reading autobiographies, because a lot of people do it for self-glorification. I mean, they magnify their achievements. Yes, achievements are there, but a lot of people magnify their achievements. And then I have noticed that some people use these autobiographies to settle scores also. They will write something disparaging about XYZ with whom they could not get on well. But I found nothing of that kind here. Here is a very simple story, down to earth, very realistic, and on several pages I thought I could connect myself with those stories, because something similar happened in my career also. And then he has referred to several police officers and the kind of training he went through. And I mean, that took me back, so to say, in the time machine, and I felt as if I'm also back in the Central Police Training College and in the riding school, riding horses and whatnot. So that's what sustained my interest throughout, and I can say that I have read the entire book from cover to cover. Only at 1 o'clock today I finished reading it in a hurry, because I got it at short notice, so I had to. I finished it today. There are some very interesting observations in the book on which I would like to make my comments. At one place he says, when he was allotted Manipur cadre, he says on page 84 that he was under the impression that the Indian Administrative Service and IPS officers are full of integrity. Well, I have seen, this is one of the disappointing features today. And as an officer who, after retirement, I had the audacity to submit list of most corrupt officers of Indian Administrative Service and Indian Police Service, once to the Home Ministry here, and on another occasion to the Chief Minister in UP. Of course, nothing happened either in Delhi or in UP. Nothing happened. But I was so worked up on this issue, and I was so agitated over the level of corruption in the services, that I thought these officers must be fixed, and somebody should pick up the courage to prepare a list of these officers and submit that to the authorities who have the competence. Well, nothing happened there also. You'll be surprised. In fact, at one stage, I committed the foolishness of preparing a list of justices of Lucknow bench of Allahabad High Court also. I submitted that to the then Chief Justice of India. Then later on I was warned कि सर आप ये क्या करते हैं, आपको कंटेम्प्ट हो जाएगा, आपको क्या सज़ा हो जाएगा, कोई ठिकाना नहीं, आप ये कर क्या रहे हैं. Then I realized the gravity of it. पर मैंने कहा भाई अब तो तीर चला गया है, देखा जो होगा देखा जाएगा. Fortunately, nothing happened. I think the Chief Justice must have thought that after all there is some substance in what he is saying, and if he issues any notice to me, maybe I will open up more skeletons in their cupboards. So he said, best thing is to just file it. So there also nothing happened. So that's about the integrity. I mean, I entirely agree with his observation. At another place he says, if you look after your men, they will respect you and obey your orders. This is on page 91. I entirely agree with him. And this is the problem I keep on telling the officers. You see, for example, I mean, about 10 years back, I was in UP and they said, sir, these days men are not loyal. You can't depend on them. You can't trust them. And he said that, look, SSP Moradabad was facing a situation. There was a crowd in front of him. He had enough force with him also. But as he was dealing with the force, suddenly he finds that the force has melted away and he alone is facing the crowd. And then he got probably some mauling also. And he said, sir, देखिए आजकल ये हाल है, आजकल you can't depend. But then I said, look, I have also served in the police and I have served in different states also. I have served in Punjab, UP, Kashmir, everywhere. I never had this problem. There must be something wrong. You don't bond with the men. You don't look after their welfare. You don't look upon as their protector, as their guardian. There is a gap, there is a chasm between you and the men. No wonder they will not be loyal to you. And in a situation of crisis, you will find that you are alone. And I mean, I remember I was there in Punjab at the peak of terrorism. Yes, at the peak of terrorism, when every time I went out of Jalandhar campus, BSF campus, I was not sure that I'll come back in one piece. That was the kind of situation we were facing. But I had a formidable pilot and I had a formidable escort. And I knew that if there is an ambush or a crisis, I was confident that each one of them would lay down his life before any harm comes to the IG. I was confident. So that is the bonding. I mean, the point is, why don't you bond with the men? You don't play with the men, you don't share their weal and woe, and you don't look after their welfare, and then you say that, oh, aajkal ke jawan bade kharab ho gaye. So I entirely agree with him that you have to look after them, look after their welfare. At another place he says, bureaucracy defies PM's orders. He says in the context of when Vishwanath Pratap Singh gave some order about the CRPF gold and Jubilee medal being issued, but nothing of the kind happened. Well, I have also this frustrating experience. I remember at an IPS association meeting where the Chief Minister was present, and this was in late 70s. I mean, we got an assurance from him that we will have Commissioner of Police posted in Kanpur. Yes, we were very happy, thrilled. Commissioner of Police, Mr. Vasudev Panjani, was designated as the Commissioner of Police, and Mr. K.K. Bakshi as the Home Secretary, and Ram Singh as State Minister for Home. He, along with the Commissioner designate, they went to different places in India where Commissioner system was in vogue just to understand how the system works. By the time they come back, the proposal is shot down. And it took another 40 years for Yogi Adityanath to initiate the commissionerate system in Kanpur and Lucknow. So how, I mean, a chief minister gives an assurance, it is published in newspapers, and it doesn't happen. So bureaucracy has an enormous capacity to scuttle what even the political bosses concede. He has also commented at one place about ignorance of the government of India about Northeast. I mean, this is pathetic. I have myself served in the Northeast for almost 5 years, and I know how ignorant people in this part of the country are about the Northeast. At one stage, Alvora got a signal saying that you should report to Chief Secretary of Assam, Agartala. Chief Secretary of Assam, Agartala. I mean, Chief Secretary of Assam would be in Guwahati, not in Agartala. And I mean, he didn't know the difference between Assam and Tripura. Instead of saying Chief Secretary Tripura, Agartala, he says Chief Secretary Assam. I mean, pura Northeast unko Assam lagta hai. So this is, these are very interesting nuggets which I found. He served, Vora had the wonderful opportunity of serving as IG, DG, and then Home Secretary also in Manipur. But more commendable was, I think, his performance in Tripura. I admire what he contributed in Tripura, because Tripura was having full-blown insurgency because of the migration of Bengalis from Northeast. and they had completely changed the demographic balance of Tripura, and Bengalis were in majority and the tribals had been reduced to a minority. So there was a lot of resentment and anger among the tribals, and they had organized two terrorist outfits, known as NLFT and ATTF. Now these were posing quite a problem. The beauty of the counterinsurgency operations in Tripura was that these were handled entirely by the police. There was no involvement of the army, and maybe, I do not know whether any paramilitary units were involved. If they were, not in very big numbers. If they were, they not in very big numbers. And Tripura is one of the success stories of, from the counterinsurgency point of view, where it was essentially and predominantly police achievement. And the success lay in the excellent strategic planning. What they did was that they established police camps. I had occasion to study Tripura, how insurgency was dealt with. They established police camps in the heart of the areas affected by a terrorist movement. And these camps, they took the terrorists in the area head on, and that coupled with several other measures led to containment of the insurgency in Tripura. I think his contribution in Tripura was remarkable, and I think he would always look back on his contribution in that area with a sense of pride and sense of satisfaction. An unlikely police chief. Yes, it happens with most of us. You don't plan to be a police officer, and in your youth they say, he can never join the police, this, that, but ultimately they do well. It's happened with me also. Nobody ever thought that I would join the police, because I was a very shy and reserved person, and devoted entirely to my studies or games, nothing else. I was shy even of talking to young girls, let me admit that. So that was life. So he said, "Ye aadmi kahan police mein kahan jayega?" But then somehow destiny pushed me in that direction, and the gods prevented me from taking the other papers which would have made me eligible for central services or Indian administrative service. I just could not appear in those papers because I had such serious problem in the eyes that I could not read read or write for more than 5 minutes at a time. So I had to miss all those papers, and then I qualified it. So here is something, an unlikely police officer. You are not the only unlikely police officer. Nobody would have thought that I would join the police, and I do not know, make a success or not, that's for others to say. What I liked towards the concluding pages was his philosophy of life. I think, and after reading this book, I would say that I know you better than I had known you so far. Whatever God does is always for the best, at one place you say. Then be grateful when someone asks for help. This is really, this part of Hindu philosophy. If somebody comes to you and asks for help, you should be grateful to him that he is giving you an opportunity to do something positive. And in doing so, you should not feel proud that I have done this for him or done this for that person. You are just a medium. आप एक निमित्त मात्र हैं जो ईश्वर के कहने से कुछ भला काम करते हैं. Don't think that you have done this or you have done that. This philosophy is expounded in the last few pages, and where he talks of serving the people. And he says, I'm not a deeply religious person. But what is a religious person? Being a religious person, Vora, does not mean going to a temple and ringing the bell and then doing nothing good at home. As Kabir Das has at one place said, denigrating such hypocrisy, where he says, दिन भर रोजा रहत हैं, रात हनत हैं गाय. तो रात को तो गाय कत्ल करते हैं और दिन में रोजा करते हैं. So likewise, Hindus also, they will go to the temple and then rest of the time, I do not know, doing all kinds of things. This is religion is actually it is reflected in the karma that you do. And if you read about yoga, there is a karma yoga, jnana yoga, and others, sankhya yoga, other things. So this is the philosophy of karma yoga that you have followed in daily practice, and I would say that it was a very religious life that you led, a very simple, plain, straightforward life, which helped you rise from the lowest rung of the ladder to the highest. And for that I compliment you for what was a very interesting book, and which broke my sort of demolished partly my aversion to reading autobiographies also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Prakash Singh ji. And I would endorse what he said, that this book is a wonderful read. I can tell you, as a journalist in my 52 years of career, this was first time when I finished a book in 1.5 days. Otherwise, I'm a very slow reader. It's really interesting. You will enjoy it. And now I will request Mr. Praveen Swami to please enlighten us. Mr. Praveen Swami.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vora, most of all, for a really fantastic read. It's a rare thing. Thank you all for making the time to be here. I'll be brief. As I read the book, I considered what a good career might be. And there's lots of matrices for that. There's medals, there's achievements, there's, in some cases, solving insurgencies. But I think the one thing that you would gauge a full life by is that it has a few good stories. And the most remarkable thing about Mr. Vora's career is that it has a great many fantastic stories. I can't but endorse what every other panelist has said, that leave aside the substance of the book, it's a great read. But there are 4 or 5, I think, serious questions about policing and about the future of our police services that come out of it. The first is the question Mr. Vora's unusual raise for the future of Indian civil services, the police of course, but also other departments of government. It's been clear for some decades now that one of the benchmarks for a successful civil service will be how inclusive and reflective it is of our population. This was a truly unusual generation. I look at other people on this panel, the other Mr. Vora, Mr. Prakash Singh, all came from backgrounds at the cusp of our independence, which went through tremendous suffering and hardship. That isn't necessarily true of the civil services anymore, where it has been reduced almost to an examination passing machine, rather than something genuinely reflective of our social fabric with its huge diversity. In the book, Mr. Vora talks about his first visit to London, and then observing subsequently that the Metropolitan Police had made great and conscious efforts to bring Asians, including Indians, into the police force. That was something that paid off greatly for British policing. It hasn't been one of our great strengths, not just in the police services, but across the board. And it's something I think to contemplate quite seriously. The second remarkable feature of the book is Mr. Vora's career. I think, sir, you were part of a generation of Indian police officers for whom insurgencies and civic conflict were a durable feature of life. It's a posting from one place of conflict to another place of conflict to a third and a fourth. And as Mr. Prakash Singh said, I mean, this was not an unusual feature of your life for your generation of officer. If it was not insurgencies, it was communal riots. If it was not that, it was caste violence. One of the questions we need to ask is how much we have actually learned from this. The last 2 decades of India, though we talk a lot about terrorism and violence, have actually been relatively peaceful decades. We haven't seen the kinds of seismic tensions the 60s, 70s, 80s were marked by. But we have to start wondering if we have prepared ourselves meaningfully for what might lie ahead. We used to talk in very happy terms a few years ago about the potential dividend from our youth bulge. We now know that we have failed that generation as a nation. In coming years, the icon of our villages may not be a farmer working on the fields, but young people sitting on the charpai gambling or watching things on their mobile phone because they have nothing to do. There will be all kinds of disruptive social tensions that will emerge. Mr. Prakash Singh had a very frightening report on caste violence in Haryana, where he talked about the institution of the police collapsing under some of those tensions. We've seen recent events in Delhi where police leadership, let me put this gently, has not been quite as perhaps dynamic or adept at dealing with conflict as it could have. And this is, in my view, a second issue to contemplate. The third is how we fund and resource our police forces. There's a very funny passage in the book where Mr. Vora talks about buying a television set and having to sign 20 bills because his financial powers only stretched to whatever number of rupees it was. So each component of the television had to be separately billed to get a TV set. We're of course generously resourced in comparison today. There's absolutely no comparison between those times and ours. But the fundamental problems all persist. We don't have enough police. The police we have isn't resourced adequately. The funding that we should have for modernization simply doesn't exist. And despite calls from many police officials over the years for change and reform, this hasn't happened. We were talking the other day, sir, about how many of the conversations we have on police reform have been, except in the matter of detail and the size of the bill, unchanged over decades. Mr. Prakash Singh, of course, knows this all too well, unhappily. And again, we have to wonder whether this is not something as a society we can afford. The last issue I'd flag is that of corruption. Mr. Vora's book has a lovely story of one of his SHOs, Jograj Chand, who was shouted at by senior officers for failing to catch some thieves. And duly the thieves were produced the next day, but his SHO confessed that they weren't the real thieves. It was just because an officer was shouting. He picked up two fellows from the street and planted knives on them and said ki chalo ho gaya dekho sir, lockup mein hai. And that hasn't changed either. The experience of policing for the vast bulk of our people, unfortunately, is not one that has more than a passing connection with justice. This is true not only at the higher levels of the police, where we see increasing levels of corruption, but across the spectrum. And some of this is linked to issues of that are quite fundamental to the way our system works. I remember my father getting very upset with a constable a few years ago when he was on his way to the temple and the constable was taking some petty bribes, 10-20 rupees from auto rickshaw walas. My father got very upset and started shouting at him, saying, "Subah subah kya kar rahe ho?" And the boy turned around and he said, "Ki saab maine 1.5 lakh rupeya, 2 lakh rupeya, I don't remember the sum, bharti hone ke liye diye. So I'm going to collect it from somewhere." And this has institutionalized itself very deeply in different parts of our civil service, in various parts of government. And we need to be talking more about reforms because, again, confronting the stresses we will face as a society in coming decades. Probably our happy assumption that the status quo will somehow get us through is not a very good assumption. I'll just conclude by saying there are very few officers who can take credit for ending an insurgency. KPS Gill is, of course, one name that comes to mind. Tripura is another remarkable example, and it's been studied. But I also notice with some dismay, and I don't think Mr. Vora would disagree, that the problems were not actually solved. The Adivasi community in Tripura, which had taken to violence against this large-scale immigration of ethnic Bengalis from elsewhere, has not had its problems addressed. It continues to confront endemic poverty, it continues to confront backwardness. And this is true in very many parts of the country, whether you think of Chhattisgarh or Jammu and Kashmir, or so many different areas. We're good at getting our police to come and temporarily suppress problems and cool things off. We're not so good at actually fixing our problems. And I earnestly hope the hard work done by a generation of police officers to control problems that at one point many sane people thought had gone out of control, that could lead to the breakup of the country, that these efforts and sacrifices will not be wasted. So thank you for a fantastic, humorous, delightful read, and thank you also for giving me at least something to think about.
Thank you, Mr. Praveen Swami, for your analysis and giving us a fresh direction to look at things. So now I will request our panelist, Mr. Siddharth Luthra, who is a very well-known legal personality, to please come and enlighten us. Mr. Siddharth Luthra.
Good evening, gentlemen on the dais, and please note there is a gender imbalance there, and ladies and gentlemen in the audience. How does one speak about a father figure? It's very difficult, but Vora Uncle or Vora Sahab's book is fascinating. I had the occasion to read it. It's honest, it's candid, and tells you the intricacies of policing. You know, there's a mention, Mr. Swami talked about the knives. I've been a student of criminology now for 3 decades odd, and I worked on various sides of the spectrum. In England, they call it the Ways and Means Act, the WM Act for short. So if you need to get into somebody's house, 2 policemen stand outside. One says, "Do you smell gas?" And the other guy said, "Yes," and they break open the window. That's called the WM Act in England. In India, there's a politer term for it, and I have dealt with this, spoken about this at police academies all over here and police officers. It's called practical policing. Now, practical policing is, there are various aspects of it, but not, that's like a PhD thesis topic. I'm not going to get into that. But the problem is, when, as Mr. Vora points out very honestly and candidly, when it breaches the rule of law, when it breaches the oath that we as citizens and police officers take in upholding the rule of law, then there is a serious fundamental problem. I had occasion to assist the state in the Nirbhay case from the investigation and then again in the Supreme Court. And I must tell you, it was a fine example of scientific policing. I've looked at it at various aspects, dealt with 2 committee of inquiries. But if we can do it in one case, why can't we do it in all? When we have tools of forensics available, of investigation available, of DNA, of technology available, why is it that we continue to breach the rule of law, to breach Article 21, to breach the rights the Constitution gives to us and which we all must uphold? After all, it's not about duties only, it's about rights also. So that's the first part of the book, and I compliment you, sir, on being honest about the reality of what happens at the Thana and below that. And that's rare. Rare for people to be so honest. The second and the more very important lesson, speaking for myself, that he talks about in his life are the travails of refugees in 1947. He talks of hunger, he talks of fear, he talks of perseverance. The struggles that people went through, whether Bengali or Punjabi refugees, people who had been turned homeless, penniless, in penury overnight, and yet there was an attempt to overcome, and many did and returned to a life of dignity and prosperity in independent India. He talks about Bharatnagar, from UDC to IPS, and all along this journey, he makes the effort to improvise, to learn, to improve. As a child of parents who were refugees, sir, I must tell you, I saw glimpses of my parents' struggle. I remembered my father telling me he lived in a camp, Kingsway camp in fact, and of difficult times post-1947. But we overcame, and there was an incident you mentioned about how things were very expensive, vegetables were very expensive. I remember my father saying, people would not give house on rent because we were refugee families. The third aspect of the book, which and I'm personally aware of Mr. Vora's personality, is the value he gives to relationships and friendships. Even as an officer in the IPS, his door was always open to neighbors, to persons from his residential area, Bharatnagar, irrespective of social standing and irrespective of whether they were not so well off. He talks about friends, and his book is peppered with a number of names. Amongst them, I see Justice J.D. Kapoor, who's a former judge of the Delhi High Court, who is an old friend of his. And he honors his friends and he honors their memories by mentioning them in his associations. It's rare for persons writing autobiographies to get so personal, and that's another aspect of the book which must be appreciated. He has a golden heart, and with actions to match, and one who has benefited from his generosity more than once, I must say. I can assure you that it's a refreshing change, as he's been honest and candid also about what the reality of life is and how we need a helping hand. Mr. Nair talked about the midnight call. Unfortunately, that's the reality of India. And therefore, perhaps it's time for us to think, shouldn't all these things be a little more straightforward? We should consider the ease of doing business, the ease of survival, the ease of existence. So it's a reflection in the book which we need to look at. Lastly, I want to point out that it's a refreshing change from a lot of autobiographies that I have read. I'm not very keen on autobiographies normally. People are not very honest and candid about the mistakes they made. Too often in penning an autobiography, most people like to say, gloss over the not so good things and only talk about the best that they have achieved or done. But the point is, should we not learn from people's mistakes? He mentions he chose a posting, I think, in the BSF as a deputation and lost out being an SP in Delhi. And he's candid enough to admit it was an error at that time. Learn from it. Perhaps it's important for all of us to learn from many mistakes. I know I make a lot. I'm still trying to understand them. Learning is a long way away. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Mr. Siddharth, for your perspective on the book. And I must say that we had different perspectives of this book, and which has enriched everyone who has, like me, who have already read it. And I'm sure it's going to enrich those who are going to read it. And now we are reaching the pinnacle of this evening. We are looking, now we were waiting for a fatherly figure, for the wisdom of Mr. N.N. Vora to enlighten us. Mr. Vora, I request you to kindly come. Thank you, sir.
Well, it's been a very pleasant evening to hear distinguished panelists speak about BL's book, which I had the occasion to read as a manuscript when he asked me to write a few lines about it. My former colleague, Mr. Prakash Singh, has worn the uniform with distinction for 3.5 decades. Praveen Swami has written about security for 2.5 decades. And my young friend, Siddharth Luthra, has defended crime for 2.5 decades. Now, I don't want to vitiate this very peaceful and happy environment of this meeting, our get-together here. But I do feel that there are very serious issues relating to policing and the future of our country. Police is perhaps one of the most vital components of the entire governance system under the Constitution. It enforces law and order. And if it doesn't, I do not know how to describe what will be the consequences. We just spoken about partition and difficulties and so on. We were 27, 28 crores when 47 we got independence. Our entire civil police forces were less than 1 lakh. we had hardly any district reserve police, armed police forces. The British administration was running the country essentially through the military, through the army, and then through its own officers who were holding all the responsible positions in the police service. Now, this is a long time ago, 75 years ago. From 27, 26 crores, we have become 140 crores. From less than a lakh in uniform, we have 11, 12, 13 lakhs in the Central Armed Police Forces, 8, 9 armed police forces. We had just the Crown Reserve Police and the Assam Rifles, the ethnic force in the northeast, and the provincial police forces. And today we have several lakhs of constabulary in the various states and union territories. But it's not enough, neither in numbers nor in capability and competence, because logistical reasons and lack of funding. Meanwhile, because of the enormous increase, 5 times, 6 times increase in population, the scale of criminality is also increased, is bound to have happened. Social, religious tensions have come to the fore, leading to communal conflicts, leading to violence. Again, a problem for the police. And this kind of situation, as Parveen mentioned in passing, when you have internal disorder, the situation on the ground is not under control, then your adversary, your neighbors, they look for this wonderful opportunity to do their own, what they have to do. So the police really faces multiple challenges from our own people, from our citizens, for omissions and commissions, for certain happenings, developments which take place because of our political activities, our democracy, free as it is. And then the external factors come in. So the police has a much bigger challenge than the army has, in the sense that the army has constitutionally the duty, responsibility to defend the country against war and foreign aggression. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I would not labor on this point excessively, but still reiterate that the police has to be taken more seriously, and the police has to get much more support. Prakash has been campaigning for reform for the entire period since he retired, which was about the time I did, but nothing tangible has come out because of the way we are composed. Our politics, our polity, our judiciary, our state political setup, nobody has any serious interest in what the Supreme Court had directed on more than one occasion. And this question that Parveen referred in passing again of corruption. This corruption, unaccountability, indiscipline, lack of professionalism, they all emanate from interference, from politicization of the constabularies. Once you have a Director General or Inspector General, or for that matter, the Superintendent of Police of a district, and you leave him to enforce the law as his bounden duty is to do. And then if he goes wrong, sack him, jail him, whatever, but let him work, let him perform. Reference was also made to this commissionerate and so on. Nothing can work. You create all kind of police commissionerates everywhere, but unless you allow them to work freely and fairly, the system won't deliver. And if you allow disorder to continue, randomly or as endemically, then we have a high cost to pay. So I would end up by once again complimenting BL for not only retailing to us his autobiography, his life and service, but perhaps unintended by him, by telling us the course of his experiences while wearing the uniform. He has taken us to various parts of the country and to exposure to the various services in which he served, the BSF, the CRP, the CISF and whatnot. In fact, to my knowledge, perhaps, he's one of the few former policemen who have served in every central armed police force, besides serving his home state and home cadre. So I will conclude here by hoping that the book he has written will trigger some serious thought about where we have succeeded, where we have failed, and why we can no longer afford to fail. Because this is connected with the future of our country. So once again, BL, my congratulations and compliments.
Thank you, Mr. Vora. I'm sure everybody agrees that it was worth waiting for these words of wisdom from you, sir. Thank you very much. And now we are coming to the conclusion of this event, and I will request Tia Kapoor to please come and give a vote of thanks. Tia is the granddaughter of Mrs. Vora and Mr. Vora. She just passed 12th from Sriram School, and she will be very soon, in next few days, going to join the King's College in London for her graduation. We all wish you best, Tia.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's now my proud privilege to thank the distinguished VIPs on the stage and the lovable audience in front of me. We are indeed honored and grateful that you all came for this happy occasion. Starting first with Shri Anand Vora, Shri Prakash Singh, Shri Praveen Swami, Shri Siddharth Luthra. A big thank you, sirs, for gracing the occasion and sharing your thoughts. And Shri Vijay Kranti for conducting the proceedings elegantly. Indeed, it was very kind of eminent personalities like you to grace the occasion. And thanks to all of you, our dear relatives and friends who have taken the trouble of coming over, encourage us and be a part of this important event of the release of the autobiography of my Nanu, B. Alvora, whose repeated stories to us now find a mention in his autobiography. Thank you, Konark, its owner Shri KPR Nair, and his untiring team of editors, designers, managers, printers, and all others assisting them for doing a wonderful job. Incidentally, Konark has also done a few earlier books of my Nanu. Thank you, media, for coming over and covering this important event of our lives. Thank you, India International Center, for making excellent arrangements inside and outside the halls with lavish tea for all our guests. And finally, thank you, Nanu, for finally writing your memoir after a lot of persuasion and giving an opportunity to all of us to gather here today, this evening to celebrate the occasion. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Tia. And then we come to conclusion of this event, and I'm sure you all agree with me that this book is not ordinary autobiography. It's reflection of the new generation of India who can think of starting from the lower floor of Jaisalmer House and reaching the next floor in the lifetime. Thank you very much, everybody.
Hello, Azul. You have a long time, huh? You're just the same, yeah. कोई फर्क नहीं है आप में. Excellency. The eternal get eaten up. बाहर से बड़ा ढांचा है. बहुत बढ़िया, बहुत. फिर आते जब जाते हैं कब मारते हैं हमारे लोग आते नहीं मुझे भी गए
एक मिनट हेलो 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 one request that the books are available outside. The author is also available here. Autographed copies can be picked up outside, of course, after making some small payment. Thank you.
Thank you.